me just think. My assumption is she's not going to show. Otherwise, she would have said, "Hey, I'm doing." So my assumption is she won't show. She wouldn't want to come that early. You were the associate. Helen took it over. I'm sorry. I didn't know you. Oh, I didn't. Did you say in the email you were going to do it? Oh, I missed that. Oh, I missed it. Oh, right here. Oh, you didn't. You didn't come back.
have a little traveling music for you. We hold in our hearts all who are suffering in body or in spirit. Although we may feel powerless to affect big changes in our world, we know that intimate acts of compassion can ripple out and change hearts and lives. Tomorrow is Earth Day, and in honor of Earth Day and the seventh principle, our song is Blue Boat Home, and I welcome again Linda to lead us.
Please rise as you are able. Though below me I feel no motion, standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor nor port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun, my sail, and moon, my rudder, as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge, wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my lost companions, all weekend pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging
before we launch into our Time for All Ages, it will be about the principles. And if you're not familiar, there are little wallet cards in a basket down at the welcome table. You can grab a little wallet card with the 7 principles. They are also printed in the gray hymnal, kind of 2 pages before hymn number 1. If you ever, during the rest of today, would like to reread the principles. But, turn on, am I using this mic? Am I using this mic?
We'll get this right. Hey, did you know that a big deal in Unitarian Universalism is our principles?
Absolutely. They are a big part of how we live life and deal with the problems of the world.
Yup, and we know they're a big deal because we have so many ways to talk about them to make sure all different brains and bodies and ages understand them. There's this way, which is just a list in English.
But also this way, which is the list on Espanol.
And you can even see our principles in languages like Arabic and Thai.
And there's this way, which is in simpler language for kids.
And there's this cool principles wheel, which shows another way to think about the relationships between the different principles.
So many ways.
All of these ways are focused on the 7 principles. But did you know that when Unitarian Universalism first came into being in 1961, there were only 6? Our 7th principle was added 24 years later in 1985.
We are not afraid of some change. Here's another way to imagine our principles. It's called a keystone arch. This is like a doorway through which we enter into our UU faith.
It's kind of cool because the 4th principle, the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, is at the center, holding together the space for us to balance between each person's inherent worth and the needs of the great community of which we are a part.
But do doorways or archways ever exist all by themselves?
You mean just floating in the air?
Not really, right?
Sure, they usually rest on the ground or are part of a larger building or something.
So maybe there's a principle that's still missing?
Are you saying that maybe we need some change?
Just like we figured out many years ago when we decided that the 7th principle was missing.
And we weren't afraid of some change then.
And that was some change, the interdependent web of all existence.
So are you saying that maybe there is another principle and it's the ground upon which the doorway sits?
Yeah, maybe there is an 8th principle.
It would have to be a very big principle if it's the very ground the other principles sit on. What would it be?
Maybe it would have to be about building the beloved community we dream about, one where everyone is loved for who they are, where there is no oppression of any kind.
Wow, that would be a great principle. But who gets to decide?
We all do. And I was just kidding. We've been discussing the 8th principle for a while. I hope it joins our other principles. I know I want to be a part of building that beloved community.
Me too. How about you all?
Credit for this goes not to us, by the way, but it was found on the internet and slightly adapted.
It's in the credits.
Oh, we'll wait for the credits. Children and youth are now invited to leave for their program and return toward the end of the service. Please join me as we sing them to their activities.
Go in love. I don't know.
Go in love.
Linda, do you know this song? Do we always sing it?
Does anyone here know this
Go
song?
now in peace, go now in peace. May the love of all surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. We just sang that illegally, by the way.
Uh-oh. We'll cut that out of whatever's posted. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you today's speaker, Scott Harrigan, my husband. He may not need much of an introduction. He's been a longtime member here and has been very active in denominational affairs, attending General Assembly as this congregation's delegate, being active in district assemblies back when we had those. He's also been a participant a number of times in the Preaching by Parishioners program and has given a few services in the past. Some of you may remember them. A few dealt with the principles. It is one of his favorite subjects. Please help me welcome Scott Harrigan to the pulpit.
Good morning. As Helen mentioned in her introduction, as of last month, Helen and I have been members of this church for 22 years. We started in December of 2001 in the wake of 9/11 and the birth of our youngest daughter, Willa. It was November that I saw Reverend Joel Miller of the Downtown Church of Buffalo in the Buffalo News. He was in black minister robes and had a vibrant red stole. And the picture was captioned, if I remember correctly, "A secular humanist responds to 9/11. I couldn't understand how a secular humanist could be a minister, let alone what kind of church would allow him to serve. I was a humanist, so I went to Alta Vista, pre-Google times, and searched for those two words, Unitarian Universalism. Frankly, it sounded like a cult, but I learned a lot. Maybe it's the Unitarian Universalist Church, or what is it called? I can't remember the one where everybody gets married in Mass. But so I think it's that connection. But I learned a lot. Well, not about being creedless, because the first thing I wanted to know was, what do these people, these UUs, believe? And I found out with the principles and the sources. This told me what I needed to know, that UUs believe, or as I later found out, affirm and promote, that every person has inherent worth and dignity. And being a philosopher by training, it seemed a serious and knowledgeable formulation of the great German philosopher Immanuel Kant's idea of intrinsic value, the dignity of rational beings like ourselves. Intrigued, I read on. Most of the principles follow from that keystone, first principle. I don't think the fourth is the keystone. I think that the first is the keystone, because every other principle kind of logically falls out of it in a neat fashion that I appreciated. Persons with inherent worth and dignity are by their very nature entitled to justice, fair, and compassionate treatment, which is the second principle. They should be encouraged to freely but responsibly find their own truth and meaning in life, which is the third and fourth principles. They should have a voice in things that matter to them and the right to their own thoughts and moral commitments, which is the fifth principle. They deserve to be protected by our community, even upwards to the whole world, with justice, liberty, and peace, which is the sixth principle. All the while recognizing the interdependence of our existence with all of existence, which is the seventh principle. Although some have contended that the principles are at best banalities, simple platitudes, but to me, these are real giants. What other religion do you know that centers its theology on the human person? Not God, not Allah, not Hashem, not even all of us together. No, you, me, persons. We are the rock upon which our church is built. We are the foundation of our faith. We do not worship up, but across, to each other, and ultimately to all the people of the world. We are a uniquely American religion, a religion, to paraphrase Lincoln, of the people, by the people, for the people. And when you add in the six sources, it is perfected. The moral logic of the principles is linked to the emotional depths of the sources. 1, direct experience of transcending wonder and mystery. 2, words and deeds of prophetic people to confront powers and structures of evil. 3, wisdom from the world's religions. 4, Jewish and Christian teachings calling us to love our neighbors. 5, humanist teachings to heed the guidance of reason. And 6, earth-centered spiritual teachings to live in harmony with nature. And you have a poetic distillation of all the essentials of a powerful and motivating faith. These principles and sources are, to me, like the tablets of Moses, but rather than being handed down from God, we wrote them ourselves. And we did not write it in stone. Yes, unlike the 10 Commandments, we can change the 7 principles. Why? Because a fundamental tenet of our religious heritage is that revelation is never closed. It is possible how we understand something today may not be how it is understood in the future. We are not inerrant. We embrace the possibility that we may be wrong. And that's why we're here today. There is a proposal to change the principles and sources. Well, not just change them, but essentially replace them with the word love and 6 other value terms. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Even when I read the principles and sources in 2002, they were not always written in that form. They have been evolving over time. These principles and sources are to be found in Article 2 of the bylaws of the Unitarian Universalist Association, which is itself the successor organization of 2 similar but distinct faiths, Unitarianism and Universalism. Their rich histories inform our faith today, but when they joined together in 1961, they had to harmonize their 2 sets of principles, and they came up with this. And I think you can see some of the language of our principles and even some sources hidden in there in the early set of principles. Note that here, inherent worth and dignity is called supreme worth. We have the Universalists to thank for that. It's a tenet that is distilled, their tenet of no one goes to hell. I put that in for Reverend Michelle. She always thinks the Universalists tend to get short-shrifted when it comes to acknowledging the contributions to the faith. But inherent worth and dignity is something very much championed by the Universalists. What I also think every one of us can see is the issues with this set of principles as well. Anyone want to call it out? Men, man, brotherhood. Women are invisible. So it's the patriarchal language. This came to a head in the early 1980s when the Women's Federation, the UU Women's Federation, led a massive rewrite, almost as big as the one proposed today, but still retaining much of the language. The focus was on, as one participant put it, religious integrity, intellectual coherence, and literary quality. I think they succeeded. These changes were adopted in 1985, and they included 5 sources in order to appease those who found the principles lacking in God language. Now, this one has the 6th principle, a 6th source, but it wasn't there at the time. There were just the first 5. Now, this was a huge revision, no doubt, but a needed one that distilled necessary changes in our view of the faith and truth over time. It wasn't done for a light or transient reason. There was another evolution over time as earth-centered religions made themselves felt within Unitarian Universalism. And the 6th source, as you see down there, was added in 1995. And as recently as 2017, there was a change to the second source. The second source, words and deeds of prophetic people who challenge us to confront powers and structures of evils with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love, was changed from women and men, prophetic women and men, note the order, to prophetic people to be more inclusive. All these revisions went through the same process. They were proposed and voted on in one General Assembly, the annual meeting of all Unitarian Universalists, and then confirmed in the next. The first is by simple majority. That puts it on the agenda. The second requires a 2/3 supermajority, similar to our rules in this church about changing our bylaws. Last GA was when they had the simple majority, and it was put onto the agenda for this GA coming up in June, which will be a virtual GA, and I encourage everyone to try to attend. It's a very interesting process. More interesting if you're in person, but virtue is still a good deal. And so it's very similar to how we have to have a supermajority to change our bylaws. As foundational documents, they shouldn't be easy to change on a whim. Now, we Unitarian Universalists have a living tradition. We have this on our hymnal called Singing the Living Tradition, which we call the Gray Hymnal. What does a living tradition mean exactly? It means that revelation is never closed, but that we honor tradition, where we come from. We are open to the future, but remember our past. We have another book, the Teal Hymnal, which is called Singing the Journey, and we call this the Teal Hymnal. This is where we're trying songs out, like Blue Boat Home, right? We're trying these songs out. Maybe they'll get into the Gray Hymnal, okay? But it's a process, not take the whole thing and the next edition doesn't have any of the songs like Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. If that wasn't there, we might be upset about that, right? Because that's a great song. Eventually, every future revision of the Gray Hymnal will choose some of the songs from the Teal Hymnal, the ones that sing to us. And I'm sure that Enter, Rejoice, and Come In will make the cut from the old one. And I'm also sure Blue Boat Home is going to make it into the Gray Hymnal eventually. It's a very good song, and we love it. It's proved itself over time, as they say. To me, the 7 principles and 6 sources have become a part of that living tradition, spawning numerous books and many, many works of art. Here in our own church, we have an explicit set of tapestries out in the lobby that was done by our own Pam Kent, who can raise her hand so everyone knows who Pam is. Pam is our artist who has done this. And she also, and we all participated in making the tapestry at the back of the chapel, which is in the rainbow motif that has grown up around the 7 principles, okay? So the symbology there is very interesting. We have accepted the principles and purposes into our hearts. Reverend Michelle has done many sermons on the principles and sources, covering each and every one. They provide the framing for our faith, a secure center, but nevertheless, we are open to change, and revision is demanded by new information, new understandings. Living things evolve, and so does our living tradition. And so it did evolve in response to the Black Lives Matter movement. There has been a movement to add an 8th principle to address our commitment to help dismantle institutional racism and other oppressions. We were in the process of discernment on the 8th principle when this new proposal that I spoke of at the beginning was interjected. How did this happen? Well, in addition to the more grassroots approach to change, there is also a provision in the bylaws to review Article 2, where the principles and sources reside, every 15 years. Yup, we UUs couldn't even let it go a generation. In 2020, the UUA board charged a study commission to review Article 2. But wait, I'm getting ahead of myself again because this already happened once before. 2000 would have been 15 years after the 1985 revision, but the UUA didn't commission a review of Article 2 until 2005. The Committee on Appraisal, which is a standing committee of the UUA, which considers things that should maybe be changed in the denomination, embarked on a review that became essentially a rewrite and presented their proposed draft at the 2008 for a vote in the 2009 General Assembly. So they came up for the first vote, which was for just a majority, okay? It was considered fairly radical at the time, even though, as you can see, the principles were essentially untouched. The main problem was that it blended all the sources into one, and so eliminated them as 6 distinct sources. This was, in the end, enough to get it rejected. Many noted that a lot of UU material, from curricula to the hymnal, are built around the 7 principles and the 6 sources. One person interviewed by UU World said that no one would ever have written a cantata, I'm probably saying that wrong, a cantata, using the revised text. This revision was rejected by 13 votes. This is in a group of like 3,000. So it was a very close vote, but it was, clearly not a majority. And that was in 2009. Add 15 years, and here we are again, review time for Article 2 once more. A study commission was charged and went through a multi-year process of engagement and then proposed this. As you can see, they essentially rewrote all of Article 2. We go from an ordered list of principles and sources to a color wheel of words: interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, justice, with love at the center. This is followed by a brief description of each, which then tries to incorporate some of the language of the principles in an attempt to honor our living tradition, I suppose. Interdependence shows its roots in the 7th principle. Pluralism says something about sacred beings, an attempt to gloss the first principle's inherent worth and dignity of every person, which also appears separately but more explicitly under equity in the more clumsy wording of inherent dignity and worthiness. The 2nd principle is given 2 full words, equity and justice, so it's the big winner in the rewrite. The 5th principle is remembered in the words of democratic process under justice. But the right of conscience is absent, though it does get a call out in another section under freedom of belief, where it is acknowledged as a part of UU heritage. The 4th principle sees its search for truth and meaning reflected verbatim in the explanation of pluralism. And then there are 2 new ideas: transformation and generosity. It is hard to characterize these as they seem unconnected to our history. Transformation is, at best to me, a means rather than an end, and really is just what happens if you're open to the use of reason in your religion. New facts require changes. Changes happen in Unitarian Universalism not because we change for the sake of change, but because reasoning over time has shown us a truer way and that we had to change. Change itself is not a virtue. It is just a necessary act. On the other hand, what do we mean by generosity here? Is it a description of who we are or an admonition of what we should be? Generosity is also a means. It is how we put things into action. But it doesn't seem fundamental to me about what it means to be a UU. If we turn to the sources, they have been recast so much that most of them just disappeared. First, they've been recast as inspiration and not sources. The top set was the original proposal. The bottom, which didn't have any reference to the original sources at all. The bottom is the revised final version after consultation. Some of these things got put back in. which is one that's going to be voted on in June. The first source, the direct experience of transcending mystery and wonder, remains, but not why. The rest may be subsumed, I guess, under sacred, secular, and scientific understandings, or more directly under religious ancestries we inherit. It seems like the sources need to be axed, as those were replaced in both attempts to revise the principles and sources. I'm not sure why that was. Why such a massive rewrite? I would like to blame the study commission charged with reviewing the principles and sources. I have never seen a commission on anything that didn't make recommendations. And the 2 reviews done so far bear this out. Both recommended serious changes, both especially against the 6 sources. So I feel the process is flawed from the beginning because of this. If you review something, you're going to make changes. It's human nature. But changes to the core of our faith should not be taken lightly or because of transient issues. It should instead come from real issues being felt amongst our congregations, like the 8th principle. Not something for the UUA board or the study commission to do sua sponte, so to speak, out of nowhere. But I can't blame the commission for this, as the changes were almost inevitable given their charge by the UUA board. I won't bore you with the specifics, as the charge is quite detailed. But in short, the charge effectively required changes to the principles and sources in order to meet its objectives. The board already decided that the principles and sources needed to be changed, and thoroughly. They charged the study commission to make love the center of the piece, and this they did. And to accomplish the rest, the UUA board made explicit that the study commission had free rein to make whatever changes required, which is the note on the right-hand side. The commission is charged with reviewing all sections of Article 1 and is free to revise, replace, or restructure them as needed to meet the objectives stated above. There is nothing sacred about the number of principles or sources, nor their specific wordings, nor in the way that Article 2 is laid out. We encourage creativity, and creativity is what they got. I will say for myself that I don't find this inspirational nor compelling. I also feel unmoored by this because something that I've taken to heart and taught many children in this church, being involved many years in RE, is so quickly, so easily, and so thoroughly cast aside. To me, this does not exemplify the workings of a living tradition, respecting the past while changing to meet the present, evolving over time as all living things do. I am not afraid of some change, but this is wholesale change, radical change without a coherent reason for it. This is not a baby in bathwater situation. It's all baby. I stayed up late thinking that one up. I also feel unmoored by the idea that we're going to be doing this ostensibly every 15 years. The Studies Commission itself says it expects a future study commission to significantly revise its work, as its mandate was just the second quarter of the 21st century, unless we slip behind the times. Real values are timeless and have no set expiration date. What are we if we keep rejecting our past on a fixed schedule? What are we if we refuse to be bound by any wisdom from our forebears? What are we if we change everything about ourselves in a bid to project ourselves into some kind of imagined future? I am inspired by the challenges of the 7 principles, which I face almost every day. They are not easy to live up to, frankly, and I often take courage from the strands of our faith heritage spoken of in the 6 sources. We shouldn't be changing our core beliefs so completely, so radically, in such a short time by such a small group of people. Today I have used my freedom of the pulpit so you could know my mind, and you will use your freedom of the pew to decide your own mind. For me, I am rooting for the principles and sources to remain the center of our faith and the beating heart of our living tradition. So, come sing a song with me.
Please stand as you're able. Hymn 346, up there. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me. Come sing a song with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me. Come dream a dream with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me. Come walk in rain with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me. Come share a rose with me, that I might know your mind. And I'll bring you hope when hope is hard to find. And I'll bring a song of love and a rose in the winter time.
I was going to say, one of the perks of giving your own sermon, and they say everyone has at least one sermon in them, is that, Scott got to pick all his favorite music. And I enjoyed that today. I need to find my spot here. We now extinguish the chalice. Oh, there it is. Thank you, Suzanne. Please join me in speaking these words. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Please remain seated for a few brief announcements. As our service draws to an end, our service to the world is ready to begin. Let me tell you about some of the opportunities to connect and serve in the days to come. First of all, please join us for coffee and conversation immediately following the service. We meet in the Emerson room, just through the double doors at the back of the chapel. If you need a place for quiet conversation, you can bring your coffee to the atrium, the green and growing space at the back of the chapel. It is Maria Serralo's birthday on April 25th. She enjoys receiving cards from church members. Please see the newsletter for her address. To live out our commitment to the fifth principle, which I'm going to have a little pop quiz, is about what? To affirm and promote the use of the democratic process, you may join in our Postcards to Voters campaign in the atrium immediately following the service to write postcards to voters to encourage them to vote. Research has shown, because we should always ask if our practices are evidence-based, right? Research has shown that postcards to voters do boost interest and turnout in elections. And remember to get to the polls for the special election to fill the seat of Brian Higgins, New York Congressional District 26, Erie and Niagara counties, through the remainder of 2024. Given the thin margins in the House of Representatives, this seat is important and voter turnout is critical. Early voting began this weekend. Has anybody already voted? Yay, Mickey. And the election will occur on April 30th. Next week, Reverend Michelle will be back in the pulpit. With interdependence, you have everything you need. Also wish everyone a happy Earth Day tomorrow, as well as to those who celebrate a joyous Passover. As always, see the church newsletter, the forward. Oh, did we?
Oh, isn't in there? We want to bring on Ron?
That's,
Come on up, Reverend. I thought I wrote that.
okay.
Oh, there's that. We forgot where you were in the script.
Yeah, just 45 seconds. Well, please join us at noon in the Emerson Room for a presentation by Jim Bardot. He's an expert on what your survivors need to know. I've heard Jim's talk. You will not be disappointed. So please join us at noon in the Emerson Room. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Yes?
I'm Jill with the UU.
Please come up.
Can I just make a
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, if you're interested in coming to the UU vote, please come quickly and we will be 10 minutes early so we can get coffee or tea and not disturb the next meeting because I have a feeling, I know I want to go see that very much. And I don't want to be there when he wants to start talking.
Yes.
We leave like 10 minutes early.
And you're in the
Get our
atrium?
coffee. We're going to be
Yes.
in there, so please don't get your coffee first and then come first and then we'll leave early.
All right, everybody has their plan. Write some postcards quickly. You can sip your coffee while you listen about what your survivors need to know. All right. As always, there's our church newsletter, the forward, which some of you may, probably most of you receive by email. It's also available in hard copy in the foyer for information regarding upcoming services and events. We invite you to participate in supporting the mission and ministry of UU Amherst with your financial gifts at the end of the service, as we do every week. You will find a green basket at the end of the chapel to receive your contributions, or you can give online or text your gift to the number on the screen, 833-987-1968. Your gifts and participation are important because we pick fruit from trees we did not plant. We drink water from wells we did not dig. This is as it should be, so long as we dig and plant for those who come after us. Your generous giving supports the work of this congregation. And now, please rise in body or in spirit as we sing our closing blessing and remain standing afterwards for the benediction.
If here you have found freedom, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another so that they may become true. And if you have known love, give some back to a bruised and hurting world.